Hey, welcome to the 2-month review, the weekly podcast from Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one large, giant, complicated book, break it down section by section, recap it, talk about it, analyze it, joke about it, have fun, make some random observations, screw up the intro every single time because I have the volume on, our YouTube thing. Okay, all over. Anyways, this is Chad from Open Letter Books, and joined as always by Brian Wood. Hey,
I didn't even say anything this time. That was all you.
That was my fault because I didn't realize that. Like, I usually have our YouTube channel on just so I can make sure that if there's a problem, I see that it's gone awry. But I always mute it, and this time I didn't mute it. So all of a sudden, my voice came back through.
Men and their excuses. I don't want to hear it, Chad.
Yeah,
whatever.
2-month review bingo. You can mark off technical difficulties. It's already happened. Every time, every damn time, and awkward introduction. But anyways, this week we're joined by Tobias Carroll. Toby, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty okay.
Excellent.
I wanted to ask you before we get started. You write a ton of stuff, and I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about what I want you to plug your books, but also your columns. I know that one of the ones that you've been doing recently that comes up a lot is the watch list for Words Without Borders.
Yeah. So I've been doing that it's going to be, I think, a year next month, and that's generally usually 6 books in translation that are due out in a given month, which has been a lot of fun so far, and has involved a nice balance of writers who I've been familiar with and writers, and in some cases publishers I hadn't been familiar with previous to taking on the column, which has been pretty fun. And I've also just started writing a new column for Mystery Tribune that's going to be monthly, and the first edition of that went up earlier this month, and now that I've gotten one done, I have a little better sense of kind of, I think, what that's going to look like going forward. So yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And you freelance for a number of other places too, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I've got some stuff in the works for like Long Reads and Literary Hub and a few other spots like that.
Yeah, I saw the Literary Hub article yesterday that you had on extremism.
Yes. Yeah, that was it was an interesting one to do, and it was also one where, like, as I had initially conceived it, it got sort of bigger and bigger and bigger because as I was doing research for it, it was kind of apparent that, a lot of different writers had recent books out that dealt with that subject in some way, which I mean is not a huge surprise given the, somewhat horrible state of the world right now. But yeah, it was. But it also, as far as writing the piece, gave me a lot to kind of go on and look into and find areas of contrast and areas where seemingly unrelated books came together in unexpected ways.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff too. And this book kind of sort of plays into that in a weird way.
Yeah,
which we will definitely talk about because this sections, the 3 chapters we go over today go way off the rails. Literally, I guess. Suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we do that, what about so you have 2 books out. One is Transitory and the other is Real. Real was the more recent one, correct?
Yes. I mean, they came out within about 2 months of each other. So yeah,
How did that happen?
I was working with 2 different. Real was released by Rarebird. Transitory was released by Civil Coping Mechanisms, and they basically just very serendipitously happened to be scheduled for release fairly close to one another.
That's wild.
Yeah,
but that's probably why I had this impression that you have like 19 books and are always coming out with new books all the time. It's because there's like a couple months in which it was just all new stuff one after another.
Like, it was a lot.
So tell us about Real.
Yeah, and then I'm on like very short tours, so I did some northeastern dates. I went out to the West Coast, and my friend Duncan Barlow and I then did kind of a Southwest to Chicago mini tour in the spring of 2017. So it was I stayed busy, which was nice.
Yeah, and that's really cool. So what is Real about? Or Transitory, or both?
I mean, Transitory is a short story collection, so it's kind of a document of the inside of my head over the course of probably about 10 years worth of stories. I think the oldest of the stories in there was about 10 years old when the book came out. So, I mean, that is kind of everything from, stylistically. I would say the one thing that was interesting about putting it together, or one of the many things that was interesting about putting it together, was like realizing over the course of the time that I was writing it that I initially was writing in a very realistic vein, and I think over the course of that decade, I remembered that I also really enjoyed working in a more surreal vein, and working, that I didn't necessarily have to be bound by realism. And so when I was then putting the collection together, I kind of had to figure out how to find a balance between not just shorter pieces and longer pieces, but also I didn't just want to have it be like, here is the realistic half and here is the surreal half, and and go from there. And Real basically follows the lives of two people whose paths cross very briefly at a punk show in Seattle, and sort of follows each of them over the course of the next few months as they attempt to figure certain things out in life, and each of them get kind of embroiled in the orbit of some artists, and ponder travel and all sorts of things.
Actually, listen to your what is the guy, Large-Hearted Boy Spotify playlist for that book yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Well, I was listening to it, and then we had to do an interview, and we interviewed this woman whose family is Korean. She's from Korea, and I ended up switching from your playlist to the video for Do you know Namsan Tower? Which, if you two haven't seen it, you must look this up, because it's one of the greatest, craziest videos I've ever seen in my life. We posted about it years ago after I came back from Korea, but as she was talking, I was like, have you ever seen this video? And she's like, I don't think I know what you're talking about. And we all ended up in the office watching it, and she was like, my family knows these people. Like, this is filmed like in an area I'm aware of. I was like, whoa, you're hired.
That's amazing.
No, she's not hired yet.
Nice.
We're still interviewing, so take that with out. But yeah, and I saw that Nylon named Real as one of the best books of 2016.
Yes.
Which, congratulations. Very good. Are you working on
a new surprise?
Are you working on a new book? Sorry, I don't know if that came through.
I think I missed that.
Yeah, are you working on a new book? Maybe.
Okay, you guys are back now.
Oh, okay, there we go. I just asked if you were working on a new book now.
Oh, I'm working on various things. I did a residency over the summer. Last summer at Governor's Island, so I ended up working on.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I have a couple of things. There was the one thing that's still very in the early stages. That was kind of the thing that I had applied there to work on. But then when I went out there, I was working on that, but I also started working on another novella that's been in the works for a while. And then I got the idea for something else that I'm kind of in the middle of right now. The one novella I have a draft done, and I'm working on some revisions of it. And the new thing is still very early on, and it's a very weird thing to write. But I've been enjoying it so far.
That's intriguing.
So yeah,
very intriguing. So switching, I don't know, Brian, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask generally before we switch to talking a little bit about Radiant Terminus?
General questions. I've been just generally questioning, have you been seeing all this negative feedback online for Captain Marvel before it's even come out? It's so random.
You told me about it, but I did not see it.
I don't know. It's
I heard that this was happening. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's just like internet nerds, but like they're so worried that's gonna have like this SJW tone, and they're mad, and like it's like, watch the movie first. Like, why? It's the same thing that happened with like Ghostbusters, and the same thing that happened with what was the other one? Why they're mad at Star Wars, right? It's that's my only general question. It's like, why are people doing this now? Why can't they just watch something and see if they like it or not? I don't get it.
Yeah.
This is like a fundamental question of 2019 American world, though.
The weird thing was, it was just this weird rabbit hole. You know how if you watch a YouTube video, all of a sudden now all the recommendations are the one video that you watched? Like, I think one time I watched one car video, and now all I get is car review videos. Like, I don't understand how their algorithm works. I don't understand math. Why is math? But all I'm watching now is this feedback on Captain Marvel is ruining the cinematic universe, and I just think about things being Radiant Terminus is just making me think about things being ruined, and men ruining things.
Men ruining things is very much a theme. 100%.
And I have this like unneeded male guilt. Like, I didn't ruin anything yet. What the hell? Like, give me a chance. I haven't ruined anything yet. I'm sitting here silently.
It is one of the problems. Like, I'm not a big fan of that last Star Wars movie because I think, like, plot-wise, it's pretty messy and not that interesting.
You hate women. No, it's because you hate women.
I know, and that's the problem. Yeah. That's not because I don't, and I think that all that part's fine. But like, I don't like the idea of like the whole movie being based around a very slow spaceship car chase.
Excitement.
Something about it, but there was something I was going to ask. Oh, how did you first come to Voladine?
I think it was actually through the Manuela Draeger book that Dorothy Publishing Project put out a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think which was kind of also the like, oh, Brian Evanson translated this. I like Brian Evanson's fiction, and I pretty much like everything Dorothy does. So yeah, I kind of got into it that way and kind of went from there.
That's interesting. Have you read all of his books yet, or are you just because there's a lot now? I've
read some, but I don't think I've read everything that's available in English. I think I've read a good chunk of what's available in English at this point, but not everything. Yeah,
there's more than one things there is because of like we've done the most, but then there's like the Nebraska, the two from Nebraska, Men Are Angels, and the Luke Cashman book of Monks and Angels. Is that right? Of Monks and something. Oh, We Monks and Soldiers. That's what it is. Is the Lute Spassman book. And then that one. And then there's one from a long, long time ago called Naming the Jungle that New Press did back in like 1999 or like 2000. Oh, wow. Yeah. It was like the first one. And like nobody mentioned. I first heard of him when Minor Angels came out through Philip Graham, I believe, had referenced him in like conversation as like this really interesting author that Nebraska published that no one really knows about. And that seemed like years and years ago. And then all of a sudden there's this flurry of stuff coming out. We do have, by the way, we do have one Manuela Draeger book coming out in a year or so. So we're going to pick up on it a little bit. And it's her like telling stories to a bunch of kids in like a camp, more or less.
What's the title of that?
11 City Dreams.
Nice.
Yeah, which fits kind of perfectly.
I had, when I was a couple of years ago, actually, I guess like 7 years ago now, I was in Paris and stopped at a bookstore and saw one of the Manuela Draeger books and was like, oh, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to, I'd studied French in high school. So I was like, I'm going to pick back up French and I'm going to like learn enough French so I can read this. And then I absolutely failed at doing that. And like the book would just stare at me on the shelf like, you're slacking again, Toby. To the extent that actually I was out, I think, getting coffee with Jeffrey Zuckerman once, and I was like, by the way, I don't know if you've read this book, but like I have a copy of it, and I really I don't speak or read the language well enough to actually do this. Like, do you want my copy of it? And he's like, yes, I would, very much so. So at some point that got passed along, which,
That's pretty awesome. I love that. That could be an origin story. That's how then Jeffrey found out about Voladine and became immersed in him. Probably not true, but whatever. It's a good story.
I think it was after I had first read Radiant Terminus, because I was like, okay, I not only do I know someone who has read this guy, but like I know someone who has literally translated their work, and like, so I feel like I felt like it was a pretty safe bet that I was like, I think you might be interested in this.
Yeah.
And also you can actually, you will actually enjoy this book and it will not just sit on my shelf like something, like a very pretentious conversation piece that would just actually turn into a very embarrassing conversation. Like, yes, I have a book in French, but I've never read it because my French isn't that strong.
I always want to do that with Spanish, and I never do, because the books I always pick are like that, where it's like, oh yeah, if I picked like, a book for a fifth grader, I could probably read it and start to improve from there. But instead I'm like, oh, let's try Cortázar. That sounds like a good place to start. Like, I'm interested in him. Like, what are these words? What tense is this? Anyways, well, we should probably talk about Radiant Terminus, which I know you wrote one of the really great reviews for. But before we do that, the game of the season is that all the guests are given the name of one of the post-exotic writers and asked to imagine what they would be if they weren't a post-exotic writer. And so we've had a variety of different people come up with different things based solely on the name of this character. So your post-exotic writer is Elif Inca. So who do you think Elif Inca is? Who is she?
Marine biologist who spent most of her career working in the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
Has a submersible device that goes the pokes around at the Arctic fish life, and has discovered a new species of plankton, and is currently attempting to figure out how to Latinize her name for posterity.
Wow. You just came up with that right now.
Apparently I'm on a roll this morning. I don't know.
That's amazing. Like that, like I didn't, just anyone watching, listening, I did not tell him this before we got started at all. This is out of nowhere. So I do have a post, like at the end of the season, there's a post ready to go live with summarizing each person's, every guest, like, take on one of the post-exotic authors, this is the first one that's not like kind of blue collary, which is interesting. There's like a factory foreman. There's like a guy that's like super high all the time, dispensing wisdom. There's like tennis instructors. It's a good variety. I like the marine biologist, and the specificity of the plankton in the Arctic Circle helps a lot too.
Nice.
Right. Anyway, so today we are going to be talking about 3 chapters of Radiant Terminus. That 2 of them take place in part 2, which is Ode to the Camps, and one is the first chapter of part 3, Amok, which I didn't intend to like break it up that way, but I just went right past the title page for Amok when I was figuring out the schedule. But we can start with so there are chapters 14, 15, and 16, going from 194 to 254, and I'll just summarize the first one. Then we can just go and talk about whatever parts of it were interesting to you guys. In chapter 14, they're still on the train. Ilyushenko is on the train that they're trying to find the camp where they can live happily and forever and in the joy of the camps. And they are stopped because there's a guy sitting on the tracks in front of them wanting to be run over and killed. And it's Aldolay Schulhoff, who you might remember as having been married to one of the daughters of s07e at the Radiant Terminus camp. And he disappeared mysteriously one night after he had been singing and doing all these performances, and everyone assumed that s07e, murdered him or did something to him. And then in this chapter, Schulhoff does explain that that's true, that the father came and talked to him and took his memories right out of his head, erased her name so he can't even remember who she was. And he's been wandering the earth ever since. And he's supposed to wander for 49 times 49 years, or 2,401 years, until he'll be like used to it and okay. And slowly but surely things are coming back to him, but he can't remember her name, and everything's all broken up. So he's been basically like mind fucked by s07e, or however you're saying his name. And they hear his story and are sort of interrogating him to decide what to do. And Ilyushenko at the end decides that he should be saved, which is against Schulhoff's wishes, because he just wants to be dead. He wants this to be over with, but can't die, which is one of the great bits of this whole book. But that's basically a good summary. So what are you guys' takes on this particular section?
I mean, one of the things that really struck me about the book was the sort of casual, if not necessarily immortality, then sort of incredibly lengthened lifespans that just kind of are a thing in the world of this novel. Sort of in addition to everything else that's a thing in the world of this novel. You have these characters who are almost sort of biblical lifespans thrown into the mix.
Which is amazing, and there is some hint at what's going on in this next chapter, I think, as to like a framework for how that could be possible. But that's always been like that's one of the parts that I particularly love about this too, is that it takes it into that world of like into science fiction or into more mythical realm. Last week we talked a lot about the different like ideological systems that are at play in this book in different ways, and the way that people need to believe something to interpret this weird landscape that's in front of them. And with this length of time of like people's lives and the ability that they can be like not alive, not dead, and not a dog, or whatever combination of that you want, that by being able to do that, it allows it to become more mythic, almost like a superhero like situation where you don't have to worry about that realism and can like have bigger ideas or more exploratory themes without having to try and be like, well, this could never happen because this guy can't live for like 2,401 years, but now he totally can. So like, that's all fine. Anything's possible. Now you can explore. It's sort of like a not surrealist move, but like in a way it kind of is, because it's like liberating to like the idea of the plot and the ideas.
Yeah, they really double down on the godlike nature of s07e05 in this one. In this
you guys keep saying that the right way, and I cannot pronounce his name.
I just made it up. I have no idea if that's right. But like I underlined, there's a section in 201, and it's about 2/3 of the way down where it begins. Nobody was permitted to exist in the Kolkas unless he'd gotten control over them in the heart of their dreams. No one was allowed to struggle in his or her own future unless he was part of it and directing it as he wished. He transformed everyone into something like puppets. And so, as not to be bored, he created puppets that resisted him or would deceive him or cause problems. But in the end, he was the one with the final say on everything. Radiant Terminus wasn't really a cult. It was more of a theater to keep him from spending eternity yawning and waiting for the world to break down. And for those who lived in the village, it was a filthy dream they could never escape.
Yep.
Right. Puppets and this bored, vacant landlord that's above all of it, kind of that's pulling all the strings, and so he would be bored for eternity.
Yeah, we've talked. I mean, last week you talked about this too. I don't know if you listened to that episode, Brian.
I did.
Welcome back. So yeah, we got a little bit into like back to that religious aspect that you had brought up early on. And in this, there's that comes up again of like this sort of mapping of like I don't know what theology it would be, but like the God that's like bored and essentially like making things and making people who are not worshiping that God or not that are like against it just because they need something to entertain themselves. But yet at the same time, like everyone's a puppet and there is no real free will, I guess, within this little situation, or whatever there is, he can just take over and change it whenever he wants to. Which I think is interesting for as we go forward and things start to collide. Or the characters start to collide.
Yeah, and part of me started to wonder if it was kind of a relationship between, like, as an artist, when you create something, are you not the god of that world that you're, where I'm going to create these little characters, and I'm going to let you do this, you can do that. I'll sculpt you out of wax and put my words into your head so you can speak them for me. And then, and you can wait over here till I'm done with you. When I'm done with you, you can wait over here until I pick you back up and use you again. Like you're playing with these characters. Like they're almost like they're self-aware that they're within somebody else's story. All the other characters in here.
That really comes up in the next chapter too. But hold off on that for 1 second too. They do also reference in this part. The one thing that was interesting to me is that they have the people who are dead that they leave off on the side, and they want the birds to come and like eat them, like eat their bodies for their sky burial. That sky burial bit is referenced in Bardo or not Bardo. So connecting his like the Volodina verse. Then the sky burial is like an important part of one of the important stories in Bardo or not Bardo. So that's and here it's just like referenced, not really like explained, but in there it's like much more defined, which is interesting.
And it does use the word Bardo. I think it was this chapter or the next.
They use it over and over again, like that they leave the Bardo or they get out of the Bardo.
Yeah.
Because yeah, there is this feeling of purgatory, right, where there can really be no change, there can really be no death.
Yeah.
And like they're waiting, like, can there be something final? Can it go one way or the other? And there's this like this eternal waiting of just torture and just waiting for judgment to take place, and there is no judgment.
That's really why I love Schulhoff's bit, where at the end he's like, now you can order me shot. He said, I have no reason to have you shot. Elif Inca said, I was on the tracks. Schulhoff pleaded, my first train stop. It's like a
no, you can kill me. Trust me, you can kill me. I've done a lot of bad stuff. I don't know.
People get slaughtered for less than that. And he's like, forget it. Elif Inca said, on the other hand, Schulhoff said, I told you bullshit instead of responding honestly to your questions. I took advantage of the goodwill of the investigators. They just tricked everyone with my invention. So those were lies, Elif Inca said. Yes, lied Schulhoff. Come on, kill me.
I have sinned. Kill me, put me to hell. Like, yeah, you can stay here.
Oh man.
I think there was. I don't know if I'm getting it correct, but I recall a line, something like, "Well, if you were a dog, we could take pity on you, but you're not.
You're not. You're neither a dog nor alive nor dead." That bit is always funny to me. You're alive, you're dead, and you're either alive, dead, or a dog. That Solove, whatever. keeps referring to. It's like that. I don't think that's a third category of being. Dog. Given all my dog bits, I think that works. That really plays to my sense of humor. Oh man. But this too has that bit right after that too, is where it starts to hint at what might be like a larger landscape for how the book could be approached. We never fill it up with fuel, Elif Inca suddenly thought. We never stock up. We go on like as if we were outside reality. The locomotive could keep going like this for years. Why not 24 and a half centuries and then some? We too, we're part of one of Solove's dreams, which we had talked about before a little bit. Is like, I think it's in like the first episode that we did, but the first couple chapters where I think it was Cronauer's like, or no, it was Vasilisa, where she's like, maybe we're dead, or they're dead and we're inside their dreams, or like maybe they're dreaming and we're dead inside of their dreams. And that comes up a few times, and especially in the next chapter it does, which reminds me, I've been chronicling my crazy Bulletin inspired dreams, because I always read this on Tuesday nights for the Wednesday morning, and every Wednesday morning I've had these batshit dreams. The one last night, I was in my city that exists within my dreams I go to rather frequently, and I was in the main center part of it, and going to these bars where they had trivia nights where you played like two-person trivia, and they played two games, like one back to back. And I met this couple there where this guy had just gotten out of jail, and the woman had been waiting for him. And when he had gotten out of jail, he was like, he through like some like lawsuit had gotten a $1.5 million settlement from somewhere for whatever, for wrongful accusations maybe or something. And so he decided with this girl that he was with, they hadn't seen in years, that they were going to get married. And the only way that they could get married is that they could watch a rerun of the Super Bowl, because it's during the Super Bowl that you ask people to marry you. That's like just common knowledge. And he used that $1.5 million to buy an engagement ring. So it's like this giant ass $1.5 million engagement ring. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea to spend all your money on that. And they're like, no, don't worry, man. We're gonna use this as collateral to buy a giant mansion, and then everything will be fine. And they're like, you could come live with us in our giant mansion. And then my dream like fast forwarded like 4 years in the future, and they had no money, and everything was like a mess, and they're getting thrown out of this giant mansion. And you were there, Brian, and you're like, don't worry, I'm suing the US government for $800 million. We're all gonna be okay, because the US government owes $800 million. It's gonna take a little while to work through the systems, but it's gonna be fine.
As soon as the government reopens, they're going to pay me my $800 million.
$800 million? Like, what the fuck is that?
Why'd you have a dream that I'm suing somebody for $800 million? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not the suing type.
No.
I know that person. I get in a car accident. I apologize to the. Oh, I'm sorry, you hit me. Like, I need to move to Canada. You know, I might be hardcore in Canada, but yeah, I'm not here.
And now I'm just imagining like some sort of surrealist American version of like Bleak House, where there's just this like endless lawsuit that like spans generations and you know, but like filtered through a French/Russian sensibility and back on through to the US. I don't know.
That actually sounds kind of awesome. That sounds like a book for you, Brian.
I'll make it about waiting for a lawsuit. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything will be fine when that $800 million check comes in. Maybe it's all influenced by the Manny Machado $300 million deal. Maybe that's where
That's probably it. It had something to do with baseball contracts and yeah.
$300 million, man. That's a lot of money. But anyway, so I don't know if there's anything else with that section. The next section is crazy. Chapter 15 is crazy, and I'm not sure if I have this right. So my summary might be wrong, or this might be up for debate. But all of a sudden, we get an I narrator that we've had those weird hints of a narrator before, where it's like we were all sitting there. There's moments where like a narrator shows up, and here like it's different. Like here, I doesn't matter, him or me, same thing. He's there by the pines, nothing special at first glance. He looks like all the male crows in this area of the world. And then I listen happily to my wings flapping, which tell me unambiguously that I'm there, solid and black, as if fully alive. And he crows twice, a cry of pure contentment, not joy, but contentment. And this shows up a bunch. There's references to the yellow gaze, which is always associated with s07e05, and has the word gaze 3 times on page 213, which has made me very angry to come across, but I'll let it go. But the golden gaze, the amber yellow gaze, the fiery gaze, so much gaze, and then he crows on 214. So this seems like this is a section being narrated by a crow, and that as it develops, the crow seems to be s07e05, and is sort of watching over the world, this world where everyone is and what's happening. And they decide that they are going to the train. I think he sort of directs them. Because he's like, I know on page 215, I know they will suddenly see the camp, and I anticipate their surprise, and I let out a caw that they don't hear. And then he's like, there's another hint that it's s07e05 on the page before that, where it's like the locomotive keeps purring as it goes along, as if its engine obeyed something other than a miracle I'm bringing about. And so he leads them to Radiant Terminus, where someone gets out and then they get shot immediately from like a gun tower. And Ilyushenko's like, man, they must have mistaken us. Like, we got to clear this up. We're fine. But what we need to do to clear this up is we're going to try and talk, but we need to be ready to like blow through and like shoot everyone, because that's like the best way of negotiating, is like be ready to negotiate, then blow people up when shit doesn't work out your way. And they bring out the one guy, Mateus, whatever his name is, Boyal, who does all the like it was an earlier chapter. He's doing the singing and like reciting all the stories and telling all that kind of stuff. And they try to talk to them to get in, and they are rejected basically immediately, and are like, no, you're not. Don't get out of here. We don't have space for you. We don't need
die
you.
Somewhere else. I think
go somewhere else.
You can go die somewhere else. Bye.
Yep. So go get the hell out of here. Go. We get a little bit inside of the camp all of a sudden, where we're back to Kronauer, and he's talking and like and not wanting to read these Maria Qual books anymore, which is interesting. We can come back to that. And then they all of a sudden they're subjected to this one of his crazy poems. One of s07e05's wild poems that like takes over everything. The other people on the train are like, fuck it, we need to go. Either we're going to crash through the gates and get into this if the train tracks are headed that way, or we're going to lead away from there and we're just going to flee and leave our dead, leave Ilyushenko, leave Schulhoff, leave everyone there. They can fend for themselves. We need to get out of here. And that's what happens, is they veer away and leave. And we have Ilyushenko and Schulhoff like outside of there, and maybe a couple other dead people, or not dead people. And they're at the camp trying to get in, and the camp has blockaded them, and Kronauer is on the inside. That more or less, and I think that this all is weirdly from the perspective of s07e05, because there's even like a section where on 226 where it says, all those or the others, detainees, soldiers, doesn't matter. I know that I can revive them when I have any need to. Either they're alive or dead or something else, doesn't matter. These are empty bodies in my theater. At my request, they can come to life if I wish it, or fall silent, or crawl for 2,603 years and then some beneath the trees until their crawling bores me. I caw. So he's like a crow s07e05. So he's like omniscient or something, or like wild. So yes, I think that's the best I can have to summarize this section.
It's interesting to see, like, there's on 220 there's the about a little more than halfway down, there's as Munzburg's body is sort of lying there, starting to become rigid. A misplaced crow perches near his head, then lets out a call before flying off immediately, disappearing over the camp.
Yeah,
which is I have a. Have you all gone into the sort of? It seems like there's a this sort of love of very specific but seemingly random numbers. You kind of cited the 2,603 years and then some, and then on 225, there's a he'll get what's coming to him. I have the feeling his death will last 1,747 years, or even twice that if I'm patient enough. And there's this sort of almost biblical feel to it, but also not at all, in the sense of s07e as, a not particularly benign sort of semi-divine figure.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking of that, and we keep citing them, and I always wondered what oh, whoa. Okay. I was always wondering if when we first read this, if there was some pattern to the numbers or an importance to them. And I know the one earlier where he's like, he told me that I'd be walking for 49 times 49 years, or 2,401 if I did the math correctly. I think that is right. Like, that doesn't multiply out. So it's not like a mistake or like a joke or anything. And I wondered if there's something to it. I just typed in numerology 1747, and it comes up with angel number 1747, meaning angel number 4 wants you to be prepared for your life by taking into consideration every little detail you can. Angel number 174 wants you to know that there's no end to good things that are coming your way if you keep on the path that you are on right now. I don't know what this means.
I don't think you just joined a cult by Googling.
Wait a second. So I was reading the wrong part.
Enjoy drinking cat blood.
Yeah. So here's the whole reminding you gently but firmly. Angel number 1747 wants you to look at your repetitive thoughts and emotions. These repetitions are telling you that you should be following these lines of thought because they're leaning towards the conclusions that you're looking for. That is very bad advice.
Can you look up Angel 420 and Angel 69? Just curious. just morbid curiosity.
Okay, I'll do that. You guys,
as you look that up, though, it did remind me, like on page 206, even the wording of it, even in 49 times 49 years, you
49.77.
There's in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, I think someone asked, like, Jesus, how many times am I supposed to forgive my brother? And he says, like, 70 times 7. Rather than using the large, he uses, a multiple to describe what you're supposed to do, to give it that. Maybe that could be part of where that biblical feel comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is 49 times 49 is 7 times 7 times 7 times 7, which 7 being like the divine number as well. Yeah. So that one makes sense.
Yeah.
I for some reason I thought 1747 was like an important prime number, but I think I'm confusing that with some other like number that people are like, that has like some special mathematical number, because it didn't pop up on here.
Yeah,
so it must be like,
I think in the biblical version of it, he says something like, am I supposed to, like, if they cross me 7 times, do I have to defend them, forgive them 7 times? And he's like, no, 70 times 7, right? So then there's that 7 times 7, 49. So there's something with the numbers for sure. But yeah, I haven't investigated. I've written them all down, but I haven't investigated what the correlation is. You're smiling. You must. What do the angel? The angels have numbers. What website is this from, by the way? Where are
Sunsigns.org.
Okay.
Sunsigns.org. Thank you for making my day so much better. Significance and meaning of angel number 420. Has number 420 become a norm in your life? You're seeing it everywhere all the time. Your ticket number of the bank is 420. Your savings balance is $420. The angels are trying to talk to you. Transparency is mentioned by angel number 420. This is making sure that everybody understands how business is conducted. It is being honest and truthful. Your company will have a rough season this year. This is because of reasons that cannot be controlled. And angel number 69 indicates that your karmic reactions are in force, and they will ensure that a vital aspect of your life is coming to a close. You'll be forced to find an alternative real objective in life and follow a new trail, and this is necessitated by the end of an old cycle. You're engaged in this change over to a fresh journey of life to accomplish your real rational goals for existence and spiritual ambitions. Your birth angels will take care of your financial and physical requirements of life. And then right below that says, antidepressants not working? Try NeuroStar Advanced Therapy for Depression.
Holy cow, man.
Not only my partner call, but they are like really honing in on like shit that I need in my life.
It sounds like the end of that was like Alex Jones or something. Where You need to get on this new pill. It's going to make you feel great. Look at this before and after picture. Look at me. I look great.
Are you seeing 420 everywhere? Has 420 taken over your life? Someone out there is like, oh no. Maybe they are watching me through the computer. Fuck. Oh, shit.
I think clearly this is where he got the numbers from, obviously. No, but there is something oddly specific about it, right?
Yeah.
And it has the same question has popped into my mind, but like, gosh, I hate going down that numbers wormhole because who knows, you know.
I wonder if I could do a search and find all of them in here, and see if there's some sort of pattern that comes out. This is how I lose my mind. This is like, there's no baseball statistics. I still have 4 more weeks, so might as well just like put together a bunch of other random numbers. Try to make sense of that. That seems fun. Yeah, I'm not sure what else in this particular section. I mean, I love that part where, oh no, there is one other thing I was going to say. So, where is it? I just passed it. Aside from the camp, aside from where they immediately turn violent. When they get to the camp, they're just like, that whole section on 221 is like, we finally came to a camp, but there's still a problem to solve before we're welcome behind the barbed wire. We may have to force our entry, so misunderstandings are resolved. Sometimes things go well, and everything happens without a hitch, and sometimes they go wrong. Mundsberg was shot dead by a guard. Everyone in position. Guns will be distributed. If you want to sleep tonight or tomorrow in warm barracks, we have to replace the administrative admissions formalities with military formalities. Like it's like their negotiations are starting from a point of violence, which is something we've talked about a lot in here. But there is a section where is it now, where he says Cronauer doesn't know it, but he's dead.
225.
Did I go right past it? Oh, yeah. My daughters go about their business in the Lebendovo, stupidly turning around this full crown hour. He'll get what's coming to him. I have the feeling his death will last the 1,747 years, or even twice I've been patient enough. The idiot soldier Cronauer doesn't even know that he's already dead, and his body has been rotting for weeks in a clump of grasses in the steppe, bloated with radiation and ants. He struts around the radiant terminus like that moron before him, Aldolay Schulhoff, as if he had been adopted forever by the Kolkosniks. I see it as if everything happened at the same moment. From the top of the pine goes back into the bird view. So it's like weird, like this is like a bird's eye view, quote unquote, and very directly of the situation. If we're to take this as like one form of like what's really happening, everyone's in his dream. He can control everything because they're his puppets, because this is all like his making, and that Cronauer is really dead and is being eaten by ants and bugs and whatever else. But in this world, he's become alive because s07e wants to like have this dream world of sorts.
Yeah, and then the page before it even says on 224, the living or the dead equal actors in a theater.
Yeah.
Theater or poorly directed dream doesn't matter. Theater of survivors or strange agaprop session doesn't matter. Like, and it goes back to again with the he or I doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everything's just kind of interchangeable in my omniscient
dream world.
Dream theater. You got to have dream theater playing in the.
Oh man, that Mort whatever it is, the music that we've been playing all week or all season is amazing. Like, I would just listen to that.
And I randomly think he might be a French composer as well. I'm not positive.
I forget. I read the whole bio, and like that one
he's either French or from like Montreal or something.
Is like pretty. That one's been pretty out of print for a while, but some of his other stuff was like rediscovered. But he was like one of the first like Moog composers, and
yeah, it's awesome stuff.
We used to have I think I mentioned this. I think you're on the podcast, but we had a Moog. My roommate did in college, and we used to just like get messed up and like late at night, turn off all the lights and play with that thing and make all those crazy sounds that you could never replicate. It was so much fun. This guy like could make music with it. It was like we dreamt of building a theremin and just having a Moog and theremin room in our apartment and just like living inside of that. It would be like living inside a radiant terminus in a way. But anyway, so let's go on to the next chapter real quick before we wrap it up. This one's very short. Chapter 16 begins part 3, Amok. And this is where shit goes wrong. So we have Cronauer trying to no longer read Maria Qual's books because basically they're all like, everything's going to be bad. Min's thoughts are entirely dominated by and steeped in what she calls the Cox language, no matter what you do. So he's trying to like not read those. Meanwhile, he dreams of Vasilisa existing there and being safe and very weak, which we had left off where she had been taken by s07e and taken back to like recuperate and then give as a gift to his son-in-law. which is real dark and disturbing. And then s07e just starts playing all those cylinders, like 3 cylinders of his crazy poetry that are broadcast one after the other. And then there's just starting over and over and over and over these same three ones that are in here, which are, I always kind of skim through these. I have a hard time paying attention to them, but like it's a nightmare for everyone. And so basically like s07e is like, after everyone tries to get into the camp and has come to the camp or whatever, he's like, fuck it, and just like wrecks house basically on people's minds through his poetry. It's the only way that I can think of it. Which is kind of amazing.
Okay, poetry time. Let us die. Please let us die.
No more poetry. We want out. Yeah, and it's sort of like all these ones are always like kind of describing him and his internal monologues, but I always fall off track with them at some point. And I never focus on them enough to like really analyze or break them down. I don't know if you two had a different experience with them.
You know, it sort of just feels like it's sort of spiraling towards some sinister but also sort of unresolvable point. I don't know. Yeah,
there's, now that I think about it, there is like the things that kind of recur on them are like, it's almost building its own language, its own imagery. Because there's always the fire, the person inside the fire. They usually have a bird head on, or bird mask. It'll sometimes reference some of the other people who are in here. There's a lot of the numbers again, 27,783. Ooh, that's a big one. 27,783, 2033. But there's like, and some of the lines are repeated. This is snow. This is death. This is a day and a night. This one is my daughter. This one will be sent into his own hell for 2,033 years and then some. Then he crowed for a long while in the tar, enumerating the decades by 27s or 112s. 112s. And then some weariness coming, he went quiet. So it's sort of like kind of telling his, and also so blind theater was born of which he was the sole listener. So it's kind of is describing that thing, but with this imagery that's like much more like fire-ish.
Yeah,
because there was also the description. There was a very detailed description of gosh, where was that? I'll find it in a second. But where it does talk about him having like a nest of fire, and then his beard being like lava. So there's this, there's these almost kind of like a I don't want to go to a phoenix, but there's like this fiery bird imagery that's repeated when it's describing him, even like in a human form versus him being his, later being a crow or a bird or whatever. But
right,
I noticed there's been a few instances where they talk about him being like sitting in a nest.
Yes, I did. By the way, the part that I just quoted from was from the previous chapter, because there's one poem in that, and then there's 3 in this one that just keeps repeating. He continues to murmur in a cryptic language, refusing to proclaim harangues that they could have appreciated and even fervently repeated. They intensified his withdrawal and left the place, and that's why nobody witnessed the slow dance that he then performed for several hours and several centuries. Magnificent dance in the silence of the middle of crackles and red clouds. That's more of your fire. It's hard to see beyond the flames. There's more numbers.
So like in 205, we get him where he says his hair flew around him as if electrified. His beard looked like a ruff of hirsute lava, incandescent in hirsute. He welcomed with a smile, terrible, blah, blah, his yellow gaze. And then on the next one, in reality, we're in my house, which is to say everywhere. Mm-hmm. He talks about being in the heart of the flames. We're in my nest.
Yeah, the space around him shrieked and whirled in yellow plumes. He put on a mask of soot, and he enveloped himself completely in soot. And he said to nobody in particular that he was coming, that he would come, but his words sounded more like a threat than a declaration.
There's was it 220 at the bottom of 224? Sometimes he screams fire into the nuclear core to better revive those who are alive, those who are dead, and those who are dreaming.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Very Twin Peaks-like again. It's the most Lynchian book. There's so many numbers. Now I'm fascinated by this, because even on 250, and having walked 163 steps of the orange path, he walked another 39,224. Then once again 163. Then he went back 22 steps and took a break to get his bearings. I wonder what that adds up to. I have to do this one separately. But there's This is I'm going to try and figure this out. I'm going to see if there's a way that
Don't worry, they have an angel for that.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
It has something to do with your bank statement, and
I keep seeing the number 39,224 everywhere. I wonder what angel is watching over me. $800 million in my bank account. Thank you, U.S. government. I saw this is random, but I saw that someone. I think I sent this story to you, Brian. But like some guy, like the IRS screwed up and gave him like $100,000 tax refund instead of $100, and they are like taking all the money back, which I think is unfair. Like if you screw up, if you're the IRS and you screw up, you lose.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. So anyway, so I don't know. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about that chapter? I mean, it's really just like him just trashing everyone for like 9 pages with his crazy ass fire poetry. But we are in the third section, which reminds me, it feels like through that and through like what's just happened, feels like the point where this book is going to just start breaking apart. We've got everyone's back in the same place. Ilyushenko, Kronauer, Vasilisa, they're all in the camp. Although they don't know they're all in the camp, they all are separated still. And s07e is angry and sort of declaring a more or less a war on everyone.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, the very last line of that chapter is like, you know, it was a nightmare, and it's basically a nightmare for everybody.
Yeah,
how it is. Like, oh, okay, it's a good prompt to read on. Thank you.
Oh man, do you guys have a favorite line from this section?
Man,
I have my one is.
I might actually.
Oh, go ahead.
I might actually like the one that you read before, the sort of enumeration of the steps. Just I do really enjoy just the specificity of it, and the sort of faux biblical nature of that line, and just how bizarre it is. Yeah,
I do like that as well. all those numbers are so wonderful. But I do like that too. It goes back and forth. The other one I referenced that was my favorite is where he's talking. Kronauer was talking to Miriam Umarik, and it's a whole paragraph, but I really like it. 2 paragraphs. Then she burst out laughing. Her teeth show between her fleshy lips. A lecherous man might, at that moment, imagine sliding his tongue over that white enamel, that he might pull his shining mouth up to him. If one believes Maria Qual, no man can resist the constant impulse towards lechery. According to Maria Qual, men's thoughts are entirely dominated by and steeped in what she calls the cock's language. No matter what they say or even believe, whether they are conscious of it or not, men can never even momentarily escape the cock's language. Kronauer doesn't linger over the sight of the seductive mouth. He looks away. So I think, as again, we've talked about it before, of like the male perspective, the male ideology, all the badness of that, and then how he's trying to not be that as best he can.
Mine is going to come from 207 at the last line of that paragraph on 207, where it says, "Today is the beginning of your hell. You will stay here until your death, except you will never die."
Usually I'm the one with the bleak one, man. You really must be having a morning.
Well, but the context of that is interesting, because it's, you know, piggybacking off what you said just there, it was admonishing someone for sleeping with his daughter.
Yeah.
And him saying, like, my daughters belong to me, right? Like, their bodies are mine, their thoughts are mine, they are mine. They're like this crazy possessive insanity of this dictator that, you know, controls everything.
So crazy.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to be going over chapters 17 through 19, which are all in part 3, and that's pages 254 through 308. So another 50-page section. But there's only four parts to this left. We're halfway through. Well, yeah, exactly halfway through the book and through the season. So making good progress. I really like rereading this. Super fun. It is fucking with my dreams though. Which already were pretty bad, but now they're like getting way out there. Oh man. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Where can people follow you online?
On Twitter at Tobias Carroll, and tobiascarroll.com is my website, which I need to do an overhaul of in the coming weeks.
You should come up and be part of the ladder conference that they have up here in the summer. So I saw that you've taught classes on.
Oh, nice.
It's run by Writers and Books, and I saw that you taught classes on various things that are part of what we're doing at the conference.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yep, for it.
I'm gonna recommend you. So
sweet.
Sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, very
Sounds
cool.
good.
Well,
Awesome.
good luck on all of your writing projects. Brian,
Definitely.
everyone can find you at Brian Wood _ I assume everyone knows ours.
Yeah, I'll tweet something one of these days. It'll be the most exciting thing ever.
And I'm at Chad W Post, and we're at open_letter. All that stuff is linked every time in the show notes. So I don't have anything else. So till next week.
Great.
Cool.